Hello again. I'm Beth Genley, your host for the Get Your Life Back Summit, and I'm really pleased to welcome Dr. Ginger Garner. Since the 1990s, Dr. Garner has been a trailblazer in transforming rehabilitation, injury prevention, and wellness by offering yoga-based healthcare for the whole person. In fact, she just recently published a textbook on that subject called Medical Therapeutic Yoga, which has been very well received. Also, a talented musician, Dr. Garner has performed internationally for multiple organizations and festivals. Ginger, I'm really glad you're here today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you for having me to the summit. And I really appreciate that your courage in tackling a topic like this. So
it pretty much came out of desperation since burnout had been such a big issue for me and for my co-author. We were just of the opinion that people needed to not go through this if we could find a way. So I'm really loving all the experts we've been talking to. And I understand that you're going to tell us some basics about what burnout is. So let's start there.
Okay. Well, burnout affects everyone in the population. I think it inordinately can affect women, but there are a lot of other factors that swirl around that, like persistent and chronic pain, rates of depression, mental health needs that typically fall onto the shoulders of women, not necessarily because of gender, but because of circumstances where they have, more biological responsibility and less support in order to carry out the responsibilities that they have. So first, I believe that this type of platform, talking about burnout, I am slightly biased as a mother of three to, again, say thank you for providing such a platform for women to address burnout, particularly when we are reading books that are very well-meaning and can be very helpful, like Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In. But how are we supposed to do that on a day-to-day basis when we don't have the support that we need in place to be able to sustain that, active leaning in? So just saying another thank you. But I think that in order to deal with burnout, we need to be able to recognize the risk factors for it. Are we at risk? Or are you already experiencing burnout and not really aware of that? I'm sure I'll get to share a little bit of my story later on, but we often aren't sure. Particularly as women, you can second guess yourself, not just every day, but hour to hour, minute to minute, especially when it's well known that even women's voices, the way we sound, are targeted as a part of discrimination on a regular basis. So first, before we can recognize what to do about burnout, we have to address the fact of whether or not we can recognize the signs of it. There are several different ways to do that. I just want to share a few of those with you, of the signs that may stick out. First, lifestyle changes and choices. So not necessarily the choices that you're making. Maybe it is that your job is requiring you fly across time zones. I know I had to fly around the world 2 times, plus multiple trips to Europe, Canada, Central America, etc. But 2 literal trips across around the world this summer, that takes a toll on your health and can fast forward any other health issues that you may be experiencing to a critical mass point. So what are the lifestyle changes that have happened recently? Is it that your job that's requiring that you're not getting as much sleep as you need? You need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep a night, depending on what your presentation, your constitution is, and sometimes that's a genetically influenced thing. Perhaps someone may be using, alcohol as a self-soother. When that happens, that's also a sleep interrupter. And I keep going back to sleep because it's so incredibly important. And I do address that a little bit in my book of the effects of sleep deprivation on children, on teens, on adults. It's incredibly devastating. So sleep is the number one most important thing that I'm going to talk to someone about as a physical therapist working in integrative medicine when they come to me with a pain, a neck pain, a back pain, or some kind of ill, is how are you sleeping? And are you using aids like alcohol or other drugs or supplements to help you with sleep that may be a short-term gain and a long-term loss? Or on the other hand, too much sleep is also detrimental. How about relationships? Are relationships suffering in a way that's new and hadn't happened in the past? Are you less able to deal with feelings of overwhelm or of coping, where you find yourself in a situation that normally wouldn't be a big deal, but then all of a sudden it feels overwhelming? Or you look back on it and you go, yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that. I probably shouldn't have done that. Those aren't something to beat yourself up about. It's just that your brain is perceiving stress in a way that it doesn't have to, which is putting a lot more stress on your health and your systems than is needed. And that's one of the things that yoga can really help with.
So I just want to tell you a quick story this morning about exactly that, about having stress symptoms show up and not recognizing them at the moment. I was fixing my oatmeal this morning, which I make the old-fashioned way on the stove. I put it in the bowl and dumped it on the table and the floor and my feet immediately, because I was having an out-of-body experience and not in the cool way. I was checked out. I was rushing. I was thinking about everything but what I was doing. And
right.
it was a little signal to me. Hello, be here, be here. So breathe.
Yes,
So you can be that
totally
simple.
Understand that. I've done some very strange things in my past, and a lot of those stories are connected with raising children and them being 2 or 7 or even now, and doing strange things, and then reflecting back on it and going, yeah, I wasn't either present or I was so sleep deprived. That ice cream looked perfectly normal in the pantry, on the shelf, instead of putting it in the freezer where it should go. And then you find it the next day. So those are products of a modern lifestyle too, wherein we've accumulated so many things. You have so much to keep up with. You have not just your own junk drawer in your kitchen, but you've got a proverbial junk drawer on your computer too, like a real junk drawer in the computer. You got to organize those files and organize this closet. And is it in the attic on my computer, or, in some archived file on Google Drive? I don't know how everybody keeps up with it now. I do have a couple of strategies for it that help me, particularly being a mom of 3 and a CEO. I am also an educator. And then, I published my first book last year. And I did all that while I was getting my doctorate. Talk about insanity.
That's pretty much a stress story right there. Why don't you get into it a little more? I'd love to hear the rest of that story.
Sure. Well, I will say this. It's very personal because it underscores the amount of support that women need, particularly if they're mothers, in order to accomplish a project or finish that book or finish that doctorate or run that company. And at the time that I decided to write the book and take on this project, I had a 1-year-old, and I decided to enroll in at UNC Chapel Hill to get my doctorate. I signed a book contract, both of those on the same day. I was accepted into Chapel Hill, and I signed my book contract, on the same day. I still can't get past that one for the, I don't know, the irony and coincidence that it actually was. But at that time I had a 1-year-old, and that's personal. And I also went on to, in the middle of writing the book, I was halfway through writing the book, I had major orthopedic surgery where I had to be non-weight bearing for the better part of 3 months. And I have a house with multiple stories and 3 kids that leave Legos and cars and things like that. I fell down the stairs 2 or 3 times during that surgical recovery. It was a hip reconstruction surgery. So yeah, I had all the inputs necessary for absolutely, positively overwhelmed burnout. And there were direct strategies that I took, which is that's a book in itself. But later on, with you, I'll introduce some of those strategies that worked for me. In the middle of doing all that, I still had to, show up for class. I had an educational company to run where Professional Yoga Therapy Institute, where I do teach and write courses. I was contracting with other educational organizations and working with universities to teach there, and then maintaining my own sanity and self-care and household, and then managing surgery in the midst of that. I'm still here.
I think congratulations are in order, although I think also a lot of our viewers can relate to exactly that kind of story of being a parent, of having maybe an aging parent to take care of having much personal life that demands attention, and being ambitious and a go-getter, and having a lot to contribute on a larger stage, and trying to keep all those balls in the air, and somehow your sanity can fall to the bottom of the list. So what I'd love to hear is some of those strategies whenever you're ready.
Okay. Well, that's the first indicator that you may have burnout, is those lifestyle changes start to shift. Poor sleep, relationships suffer. You're picking up this food when you know you should be picking up the other food. One too many stops at a Starbucks for that caramel whatever thing, which also takes a hit on your finances, right? Those things start to suffer too. There's a couple of other things that I want people to go on their radar, their red flag radar, is analysis paralysis, overthinking, thinking yourself into a fear situation where you just decide, oh, I just can't decide at all, or I'm not going to do that because this might happen. You play too much of an if or a then situation. And that can get us into a really bad situation, because it's not that we're just choosing a safe path, but we're choosing a path that doesn't allow us to become all that we can be. And then we have regrets about that later, when you realize maybe you're not using that talent, the way that you wanted to, or you're not going after that interest that you have with passion, that you could accomplish. So that's another red flag.
Well, hang on a second, because I lost you there somewhere. How analysis paralysis relates to choosing a safe direction. You made a connection there that I didn't get.
That one of the signs of burnout is just thinking things to death. And you kind of think yourself into a closet or a corner where you either decide to do nothing at all, or you just choose the safest path, but you're not interested in it. It's not what drives you. You're not passionate about it. It's just a safe path because you have overthought the situation. And that also can, you have relationships that can suffer. And the one with yourself too, when you go, if I wouldn't have been so, timid, or if I would have just had confidence, right? We start to lose that self-confidence. I would have gone for my dream. I would have done what I wanted to do. So I think that in the end of our lives, we have a lot of regret of that analysis paralysis of making fear-based decisions.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for clarifying. All right.
And I wanted to quote an author because I thought that it was really relevant to what we're talking about. Rebecca Solnit has written many different books. She's an activist, author, historian. She says this, because another one of the red flags of burnout is cynicism. And that is all that remains, I think, when hope has been lost, is the bitterness and the cynicism. He says despair and optimism are the same. Despair and optimism are the same. And I pondered this for a long time, and I thought, okay, from a yogic perspective, as a integrative practitioner, I get what she's saying. She's saying that we're so egotistical if we're just mired in optimism or mired in despair. It is our ego saying, I've got all the answers. I know the end of the story. I know exactly what's going to happen. And you're either so optimistic that nothing happens, or you're in such despair that nothing happens. And then in the end, it's an excuse for inaction, that you do nothing, that you say, oh, everything's going to be fine. And then you become apathetic, or nothing will ever be okay. I give up. And then the same result takes place. I thought that was brilliant, because it's just our ego saying, I already know the future. Just take it. Just take what comes, right? So at worst, at the very worst, it breeds a hopeless condition for someone. I know you've probably experienced that, going through a hard time when the optimist telling you, oh, it's just going to work out and everything will be fine, is not what you want to hear. It's not helpful, right?
Yeah.
It's the last thing that you need to hear. So sorry about that.
It's okay.
That's my puppy in the background. That's one of the ways that you can treat our burnout is pet therapy. She's enthusiastic.
Yes.
Hopefully she'll relax in a second.
Yeah.
But anyway, we don't want cynicism and bitterness to win out, is basically what she meant by that. A couple of other things is finally something we've mentioned already is relationship issues, how you respond to stress. I mentioned that. His name is escaping me now. Daniel Goleman coined the phrase amygdala hijack.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, have you heard that phrase before?
No, I haven't. I'm fascinated by this.
Well, what he means by that is the lower brain takes over when you experience stress, or not just experience stress, but you just perceive stress. So your brain thinks you're in a dangerous situation. Now, this may not be the case. It may not really be a dangerous situation, but it doesn't matter, because it is up here. Your brain perceives stress. When your brain perceives stress, the amygdala goes, I got this, right? It's another, it's like a lower brain ego saying, oh yeah, I got this, knee-jerk reaction. And then it's the thing that, you do when you're driving and somebody cuts you off. Or it's what you say to your kids, but then you go, yeah, I shouldn't have said that. Or you lose your patience. That's called an amygdala hijack. It's when in retrospect, you look back and you go, yeah, I could have made a better decision there. That's how you know if you've had an amygdala hijack. And that's another sign of burnout. Another sign of burnout. And then the last one is health issues. You see your health begin to decline in ways that is new or maybe old. A lot of what I see as a physical therapist, I've been working with people with persistent pain and chronic pain for 20 years. And what I see is them coming in with a cacophony of these things. Poor sleep, lifestyle choices that they're not very proud of now. Maybe they're eating more fast food, or more, not just fast food like McDonald's fast food, but off-the-shelf fast food, right? Just a quick heat up and eat instead of making food. That takes a toll on your system over time. And you might be surprised to hear that over half of what I do as a physical therapist is talk to people about their nutritional choices and their lifestyle choices, including sleep, which makes me kind of the lifestyle coach, as a physical therapist. And I think that's the future role, really, of what a physical therapist will do. Someone comes in with back pain and chronic headaches, and, as a PT, I go, well, how about these factors? How are you sleeping? What are you eating? Have you had any genetic testing done, which is another solution I want to make sure that you take away with you, is to consider doing that. The reason, and it gives you really good information on how your DNA is being preserved and maintained, and if you're missing any critical elements that are creating chronic fatigue or pain, or could even be setting you up for a chronic anemia situation. So those are things that are within your grasp to fix. So now I'll get to that list of what to do.
Okay, great.
But just to summarize, red flags for burnout: relationship changes, health changes, sleep changes, all those fall under lifestyle changes, overthinking, and cynicism. Those are, indicators that you might be experiencing burnout. So what do I do? What do I do when a patient comes in and they have back pain? Well, I'll just use a case study from a real patient. I had someone come in and they had chronic pelvic pain to the point where it's preventing them from enjoying all the activities that you want to enjoy, as a woman. She had just given birth to her first child, wanted a second child, but couldn't in any way imagine doing what it takes to get there. So lots of pelvic pain, lots of gastrointestinal problems. She had her first colonoscopy at age 14. She had blood in her stool from age 14 on, and then she was into her mid-20s by the time she came into my practice. And docs had just said, you have to live with it. There's nothing that we can do. It's all in your head. When she had her first child, her doc also said, drink a glass of wine and relax. You'll be fine, with relationship to sexual dysfunction, pelvic pain, back pain, kind of thing. Well, there was lots that she could do. This wasn't outside her control. And to tell you how important it is to get a hold of those lifestyle issues and take a look at the whole person, I only saw her twice, 2 times. And they were about a month apiece. And then I saw her just before, one more time, and I'll tell you the circumstances. It's a bit of a celebratory story. I only had to see her 2 times before her pelvic pain immediately subsided and her chronic constipation that she had had for 14 years was there. We made basic changes across the board for lifestyle choices for her. And after those 2 visits, where we did pelvic PT, some internal work, some external work, a lot of lifestyle coaching for her, she went on to get pregnant with her second and went through that second pregnancy with no pain, no problems, no more GI issues, no more bloody stools. And of course now she has, her 2 wonderful children and no pelvic pain in the postpartum either. And the difficult thing there is, for her, she's a success story. But in the beginning, she didn't even have the support of her immediate family members. They looked at her and said, number one, why are you stressed out? I mean, okay, so you're a teacher and you're a mom, and it's only 1 kid, it's not 3, and no other moms I know tend to suffer from this, so why are you having pain? And that was the kind of response that happened for her. That can be devastating. And we know that school teachers and all educators, even in university settings, have a high amount of stress. Not a lot of budget to go, very far for educating students. So she can very well have been in that situation of burnout where she didn't feel like she had the support she needed. But with that support, that's what I look at. It's called a biopsychosocial approach. And the biopsychosocial approach has just, my goodness, it's like a Rolodex. Now I'm telling my age. It's like a Rolodex of supported scientific studies that say, yes, the biopsychosocial model not only works, but it's superior to the model that we're using now. And we need to integrate the 2 so that we can use this approach all the time with all patients. So when I look at that, and that's what I used with her, that's the first thing I would suggest to seeing a practitioner, whether it's in mental health, physical therapy, general medicine, that knows what biopsychosocial means. What does that approach mean to them? And that's a question you should ask. And if they can't answer that question, then that's probably not the practitioner that you want to go to. But you want to go to one that says, yes, I use a biopsychosocial approach combined with a biomedical approach, and I look at you as a whole person, not a diagnosis code of a rotator cuff tear or low back pain. So that's my first suggestion for them. Second, I look at that for myself. So more of that, getting back to that personal story that I promised a little bit. I do this. I use medical therapeutic yoga, what I write about in my book, like I said, I'm a mom. I have 3 boys, so I'm a member of that 3 boys club where we got a lot of noise and a lot of dirt to deal with on a regular basis. I have a company that I run. I'm a CEO of that. I am primary faculty and educator there also. And of course, again, I said, published my first book last year. And why do I say all that? Just to let you know, that's what I do. That's where I could have easily succumbed to that burnout. And when you start to recognize those signs is immediately when you begin to start to say, okay, what can I do about this? How can I be better? Well, there was during that time of writing my book and finishing the doctorate and doing all my regular, daytime stuff and day job and wearing the mom hat, where of course you go through burnout. I knew that I had an end to it, that when the book was published and when I got my degree, I would go back to just wearing a couple of hats instead of 4 or 5 hats. I knew it would get better, but it doesn't take the edge completely off. So I really had to go through a little burnout, therapy after all that was over and say, okay, what do I really need to do to take care of myself as best as I can? The first one is, and this is what I recommend for you, I've got a short list here for you, is to recognize when those boundaries that you know are healthy maybe have shifted. And it's so subtle. I tell people all the time, just because a plan is a good plan doesn't mean it's your best plan. That teaching that, because I teach a lot of healthcare providers who are going to go back and use yoga in healthcare. So I tell those healthcare providers, just because that nighttime yoga, medical yoga class that you are going to teach is going to be a great thing, doesn't mean it's going to mesh with your best scenario for taking care of yourself and your family. You have to work it backwards. If being at home in the evening to enjoy dinner with your family is a priority for you, then work it backwards. Don't accept any of those jobs that are going to take you away from that. And that's hard, but it does allow you to say no and to set those boundaries in a way that are healthy for you. It may be someone at church or from a nonprofit agency who wants you to serve on a committee. That's a perfectly wonderful thing to do, is to volunteer your time. But instead of saying yes right away, you might just say, this is important to me. Let me think about it. And I'll get back to you in 2 days or 3 days, or give them a date that you'll get back to them at. Instead of just saying, oh, I would love to do that. It sounds like a great thing. Okay, let's start planning. Right? It also teaches the other person to value your time. So put a time limit on it. Don't give immediate answers. And that is learning to recognize when your boundaries, you may have, fallen off the wagon a little bit in terms of setting boundaries. Recognize when you have a lack of boundaries and work to optimize those. So that proved difficult for me because my boundaries had to be artificially taken down to do all that I was doing early on. And then when I finished the book and I finished the doctorate, what's the first thing I probably wanted to do? Fill the space right back up, fill the jar right back up to where it was, because that's the work, the productivity level that I was used to, but it wasn't sustainable. It was only possible for those 4 years that I did that, and then I had to back off of that. So the second thing to do in recognizing lack of boundaries and optimizing those boundaries is take time to play. So to beat burnout, to prevent burnout, obviously you want to prevent it instead of just treating it, is your boundaries. Number 2 is playtime. Did you know that, I find this intriguing, Native American medicine, Chinese medicine, both, and I could probably say Indian and Ayurvedic medicine also, since that's where I spend most of my time, are in those medical systems, all agree that if with a lack of play, your health suffers. And it's very similar how they look at them. When I looked at traditional Chinese medicine and Native American medicine, they say very similar things. You tend to have burnout in similar ways in your body systems without play. And here's how you have to play. With no goals. That's hard. Which means I'm going to walk my dog. My dog is total therapy for me. I have a black Labrador retriever. We've had her about 4 months. She's a rescue lab. I'm going to walk my dog. Do you know what I want to do? I'm just going to take my phone with me and see how many steps I get, right? That's a perfectly good thing to do, but do you know what? I'm going to whip that phone out and see if I've walked 5,000 steps. And that's probably not what, the philosophers intended. I read a lot of David Whyte, poet David Whyte. That is not what he would do. That's not what Thoreau would teach us to do. It's just not meditation. It's not play. It has an end goal. So do something. Learn how to knit. I don't know. Make bath salts. Blend essential oils. But do it with no goal in mind whatsoever, and you'll be amazed at how you feel afterwards. It really does lift the mental kind of brain fog that you're experiencing.
I want to interrupt you again for a second because you made another link that I'm fascinated by and I want to hear a little more about. And I also want to let you know we're kind of coming to the end of our half hour. You use meditation and play in the same sentence, almost like they're the same thing. Mm-hmm. And that's a fascinating concept. So can you enlarge on that just a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a short little story.
Okay.
And I'll try not to use the same expletives I used when I made this little epiphany for myself. However, I had 2 kids at the time and was contemplating a third, but mortified of the idea of having a third, of being outnumbered and going back and starting over again. So I knew they were going to get home from their school soon. And this is when I was still juggling the preschool CEO, responsibilities of traveling a lot. I knew that down to the minute, I had this many minutes. So I was fitting in my regular yoga practice, meaning on the mat, posture practice and breathing practice. And I got down to the end and I knew that I wanted to do, as is historically, traditionally true, Shavasana, corpse pose at the end where you're relaxing. And I looked, not literally at my watch, but I looked at my watch, looked at my phone. God, I only have like 7 minutes. It's not long enough to take a shower and to do Shavasana. What do I do? I said, you know what? Yoga was created for men and young boys, not busy CEO moms who are leaning in and trying to conquer the world and find their place in society. Excuse my language, but I was just like, screw Shavasana. I don't need to do Shavasana. I'll do it in the tub. I'll recalibrate it. And so I did. And that's kind of what I mean by play and meditation together. We don't have to sit, and do we don't have to cross our legs in lotus pose and blow out our medial, our lateral collateral ligaments. We don't have to do all that, especially as moms, because a lot of those positions are not happy positions for your pelvic floor, for the girl, the woman parts. So you have to recalibrate it. And that's one of the ways that I kind of get outside the box of what traditional yoga was. Yoga needs evolution, just like medicine must evolve to stay relevant and to stay safe. So I got in the tub and I did my Shavasana, and you know what? I felt pretty good about it. So sometimes you have to think about that meditation. Don't think of it as being some rigid thing. Just get out there and play. Don't time it. Just go for a walk and have that be your meditation. No, don't count your steps.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. All right. Yeah. And do you have a last tip to wind up here with?
I do, and they're very practical. Number 1, find yourself a good functional medicine doc. You can just Google functional medicine practitioners. You can go to the Institute if you prefer, but find a good functional medicine physician. Consider doing genetic testing. 23andMe is a great website to do that. Find yourself an integrative physical therapist together with a functional medicine physician and an integrative physical therapist. Those are probably your 2 biggest longevity practitioners. An integrative nutritionist, nurse practitioner, they're fantastic too. But start out with functional medicine and functional nutrition, and integrative physical therapy, and they will be able to identify things that will help you add quality of life to your years, not just years, to your life. Share yourself, share your story. I was wanting to talk about Brene Brown a little bit, but what I can tell you is if you want to address burnout, pick yourself up a Brene Brown book and you will not be disappointed at all. Start out with one of her TED Talks. I would recommend that. And as a woman, don't forget to ask for help, and don't be afraid to admit that you need it. That's one of the things that frustrate me the most when I, see a celebrity or something like that. I know they have kids. They say they don't use a nanny and all this. Yes, they do. They have someone cleaning their house and picking up their laundry and doing all the things that it would cost $200,000 for someone to pay for a woman and a mom to do everything that we do. So admit, yes, you may have someone help you clean your house. You may have someone that's an assistant to you helping you. Talk about that stuff out loud. Own your stories, and don't be afraid to say yes, as women, as moms, as people, because stress and burnout affects men too. And I wanted to talk about the statistics there. Violent crimes increase with men. Suicide rates in teenagers increase, particularly in the United States, and that's sad. So it's not just that burnout's affecting women, of course. It's affecting men and children too. And then finally, make some noise. Make some noise. Noise, sound, okay, particularly music, is one of the things that can really be a lifesaver for people in pain, for people even with dementia. So think about your older relatives and people that you love. Put some music into their lives. You will be amazed at how they respond. Once I had a traumatic brain injury patient, and I learned what kind of music she liked. She liked Eric Clapton. I put on Eric Clapton for her, and she got up and she walked. She walked with me, and before I struggled to even get her from sit to stand, right? Music can make such a difference with people. It's my oxygen. I was just doing a performance this weekend at Carnegie Hall with an international chorus. And I can't tell you how therapeutic that is, and how it's one of my prevention pieces for burnout. So yeah, that's one of the reasons I can do what I do, is because I make some noise. People in choirs who sing are happier. So you may not be able to hold a really cool tune in a bucket, but go join a choir anyway. You're going to live longer, and those people are happier. And one more statistic I want to leave you with is moms, in a recent study, mothers who had postpartum depression, which is a serious issue. It is the most common postpartum problem. The rates are just skyrocketing on postpartum depression, which we know is dangerous not just for moms, but for infants and toddlers also. Those moms who participated in a music session in singing actually were able to resolve postpartum depression faster than regular talk therapy. Get out there and make some sound, listen to music, and enjoy yourself to build that resilience, to build the quality of life you want to either prevent or manage burnout.
That's beautiful. That is just awesome. Thank you so much for all that. That was a pretty comprehensive look at it all. Can you talk just briefly about the free gift that you're offering?
Sure, yeah. If you go to medicaltherapeuticyoga.com, you'll get that link in the information from Beth. I've arranged for you to get free access to about 24 videos. Woo. So some of them, yep, we're making noise in them. You can certainly put them to music also, but I've selected music that's therapeutic for you in the videos. And they are breathing and yoga posture practice videos that are recalibrated based on the evidence base in physical therapy. So they are therapeutic in nature. They are yoga driven and yoga based. And I hope that you enjoy them. You will also get access to the first chapter in my book, and also the preface, which is kind of my story about burnout and how I overcame it. It was very hard to write. It's the first time I've ever said some of those words out loud. It was a very personal reveal for me. So go and download the preface to my book. That's my story. And I'm sticking to it. It's how I overcame. And then the first chapter in my book, which talks all about what the biopsychosocial model is.
Beautiful. That is a very generous gift. Thank you so much, Dr. Garner. This has been a fascinating conversation with a lot to chew on.
Thank you. And I thank you overwhelmingly for inviting me to be a part of the summit. I really appreciate it. Lots of gratitude for what you're doing, and I wish you the most success at it. Thank you.
Oh, same to you. Thanks.